How come this is like,
Right.
so
Got it.
Hi, everybody mute yourself, please. Thank you.
Are we good? Take it away. Will do. I have a lot of information, and I will ask you to read some slides, and then I'll speak after I give you a time to read. It's always very difficult for me because it means I have to be quiet. So read this slide about the National Academies of Sciences. They captured my essence. So this is what I have been attempting to communicate to the American people for 5 years. And I have been a failure because really I haven't been able to shift the focus from the drinking water. I mean, it is a grand conspiracy here. Because the EPA and the FDA and of course the DOD all want to focus on PFAS contamination in drinking water. Now, PFAS, of course, is per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and they are contaminating the earth. And but the number one way that people are contaminated is through food they eat. In fact, the European Food Safety Authority says that 86% of the PFAS in our blood is from food, especially fish. And so we got to keep that in mind as I go through this, okay? And I'll get to my next slide here.
Maybe I shouldn't buy fish.
There we go. And, you can ask me questions as we go along, or, I can give a, 25-minute presentation and then stop. So however you want to proceed, okay? But the National Academies of Academies of the Sciences refuse to suggest or to get behind nationwide fish advisories. And I'll start with this now and then pick up on the military end of things a little bit later. But I've given so many of these presentations, and I always start out on the military side, but here I want to start out on the problems with human health. So I'll stop talking. You read this for 20 or 30 seconds.
It's no matter what you eat, you're going to get it.
So this is great hypocrisy at the highest levels of science in the United States of America. We have fish with 10 million parts per trillion in the fillet, caught outside of military bases. And meanwhile, we are focused almost exclusively on drinking water. And for the most part, the drinking water in New York City is in the low single digits for a range of PFAS. So let me go to the next slide here. Now I don't know, can you see this okay, where it says National Academies of Sciences did do one right thing? They say that total blood levels for 7 types of PFAS above 2 parts per billion call for additional testing. So not to get too heavy into the science end of things, but if you have more than 2 parts per billion, in your blood of 7 different types of PFAS, you're probably in trouble. You need to get tested, especially for high cholesterol and problems with your thyroid, and especially for women who may be pregnant. This is a huge issue, a very pressing human health issue in the United States that is simply not being addressed. Now, I went in, I was a community liaison with 24 folks, and several of us got together ahead of time and said, look, let's try to get them to do two things. One, let's try to get them to say, we need fish advisories. And two, let's get them to at least pick a level for blood. And that says to physicians across the country, if you're over this level, then you ought to do additional testing. So we lost on the fish item, but we did get this accomplished. But the practical impact is nothing. And that's because the VA is not on board. Just read this for 10 seconds, if you would. This is garbage. This is garbage because I've managed to collect dozens and dozens of blood samples from veterans, almost, well, not mostly men, but it's not just firefighters. It's not just, AFFF, aqueous film forming foam. PFAS is used in high amounts in military applications like engine cleaning. So when jet planes are, maintained in hangars, they use tremendous amounts of PFAS to clean engine parts. They also use it to coat wire, and they use it to, lots of different applications. Chrome plating comes to mind. They'll plate different metal parts with chrome. And so the people with MOSs or military occupational specialties, doing these things are all sick. And the way we find out that they're sick, if they go to the doctor and they have kidney cancer, or they have testicular cancer, or they have bladder cancer, check them. First thing you do is check them for PFAS levels in their blood. But the VA says, no, we don't want to do that. It's evil. So anyway, I want to try to make 2 points here. One point is that there's too much emphasis on PFAS levels in drinking water, with too limited a focus on PFAS exposure from food, especially seafood. So that's my big fat takeaway there, But secondly, the military's got to take responsibility for poisoning the nation's aquifers, surface water, sediment, soil, and air with PFAS. Now, what you see here is an overhead suppression system. And they basically take concentrate, AFFF concentrate, and most places now use the 3% concentrate. And the 3% concentrate is in 55-gallon drums. And they pour it into a system. And it's kind of like if you were going to wash your car. And let's say you had a 1-gallon bucket, and you filled up your gallon bucket with water. And then you took a little squirt of dishwashing liquid. Well, it still looks like water. But if you have an empty bucket and you put a tablespoon of Palmolive dishwashing liquid, and then you squirt the hose, at full force, this is what it's going to look like. So this is 97% water, 3% AFFF, which is largely made of PFAS. And so you look at this and you come to realize 1 teaspoon can contaminate a medium-sized city's drinking water reservoir. So it's just staggering. Now, Michigan tested 2,841 fish, and the average fish had 80,000 parts per trillion. I'll let that settle in your brain for a second. So, you know, we are always talking about 8-ounce portions. So you fillet a fish and you have an 8-ounce piece of fish. What we're talking about is that 8-ounce piece of fish has a concentration of 80,000 parts per trillion. Okay. So, but in the meantime, you know, you can eat the fish. It's not a problem. But you can't drink the water if it has more than 16 parts per trillion of PFOS. So if water service providers go above that limit, they're shut down. But it's okay to consume fish that has 80,000 parts per trillion. So the EPA, a few months ago, actually last year, lowered its advisory for drinking water to 0.02 parts per trillion for PFOS. So that means if you take 80,000 and you divide by 0.02, the average fish has a PFOS concentration that's 4 million times greater than that allowed in the water. You know, a fish near Wordsmith Air Force Base had 10 million parts per trillion in its fillet. That's 500 million times over the EPA advisory for the water. See, what they did, these idiots dug 200-foot craters, 2 to 3 feet deep, and they filled them with JP5, JP6, you know, jet fuel, and other things that they needed to get rid of, you know, like oil or, you know, reused oil that they're throwing away from, you know, changing the oil on jet fighters, etc. Okay. And they'd pour it into these craters, and they'd get 6 or 8 firefighters, all dressed kind of like, you know, what Bill Murray wore, you know, in Ghostbusters. And they'd put it out with this shaving cream type stuff. And that was practice. And they would do it biweekly or monthly, using thousands and thousands of gallons of AFFF. And it would go directly into the soil, which would go directly into the groundwater, which would eventually head into the surface water, which would eventually poison everything we eat. Now, there's evil here. And telling you, I really want to find more about the Great Lakes Consortium for Fish Consumption Advisories. You know, it's shady, man. I don't understand it fully. I don't know who makes up this committee or this group. But there are lots of states, what, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. They all are in. So the Great Lakes Consortium basically says you can eat as much fish as you want if it has less than 10,000 parts per trillion of PFOS. And you can see the chart. Oh, but don't eat it if it's more than 200,000. You know, I know at this point in my talk, it's not clear what any of this means, but it's not good. And it just might have something to do with, you know, the financial implications of telling people you shouldn't go on a charter fishing boat and you shouldn't eat this fish or this shrimp or this lobster or these clams at a seafood restaurant. This is draconian. So anyway, in New York, it's okay to consume an 8-ounce portion of fish containing 200 micrograms per kilogram of PFOS. That's 200,000 parts per trillion in a serving of fish in a single month. This concentration is 10 million times higher than the drinking water advisory.
1, 2.
Yeah. So the Great Lakes Consortium
Right.
for Fish Consumption Advisory says it's okay to consume an unlimited amount, an unlimited number of fish containing less than 10,000. It's still 500,000 times greater than the concentration set by the EPA. So the Europeans understand this. They're on their way to totally banning this stuff in a few years. They get it. This is serious, but not here. Not here. Financial interest trump. Hey, Nell, you need me a beer? So, eating the fish causes cancer, and it's going to cost a lot of money. It's like what we found out in Lake Champlain. We tested the water drizzling into Lake Champlain. I'll cover this a little bit later. And the lake is poisoned. But I did outreach to every member of Vermont and New York's legislature. Said, hey, man, we found 8,000 parts per trillion of PFOS training into Lake Champlain. What are you going to do about it? Nobody got back to me. Because I'm radical. See, I'm military poison. So I got something wrong with me. I'm half cocked. Something, it ain't right. So I'll call them out, it's evil science. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to this. It's worse than the National Academies of Sciences. It has become increasingly clear that the health effects of exposure to contaminants from eating fish may be modified by fish nutrients, including omega-3 fatty acids. These nutrients co-occur with contaminants and have benefits on a wide range of human health endpoints, including neurodevelopment, blood lipids, and cardiovascular health, and immune system function. Setting fish consumption guidelines should therefore take into consideration the benefit of fish consumption and the degree to which this may offset the adverse effects of fish contaminants. So don't worry about that PFAS. Fish are good for you, and the good stuff will take care of the bad stuff. There you go. This is policy in the United States of America. This is policy in New York State. So go ahead and read this.
I'm afraid to ask you how many contaminants are found in the beer you're about to drink.
Oh no, this isn't beer. This is apple juice. Oh, man, I forgot. That's right. I'm on. Oh, geez. I would imagine a lot, but it's very expensive beer. It's Blue Moon Belgian white.
Okay.
So there you go.
Just have some fish products with it and you'll be fine.
Yeah, fish and chips. It's like in London. Oh my God, came out of the Independent 3 days ago. And they're working with these people for 4 years, and finally they published a story 3 days ago. 51,200 parts per trillion of PFOS in a flounder in the Thames in central London. About time. So that's kind of cool, because they've been so stubborn. They're not as bad as the Irish. The Irish are even worse. They are completely in denial and don't want to deal at all. But they know the score. Anyway, sorry, I get emotional, So a little bit more, centered on New York, and there are lots of contaminants out there, and gosh, I have been faulted for paying too much attention on PFAS, and PFAS does drain from things. I mean, imagine if you're from Mooresville, North Carolina, and you've got children on the cul-de-sac that are dying of various types of cancer because of coal ash, and all people want to talk about is PFAS. Or you live outside of Sandia, in California, and nuclear waste is contaminating your neighborhood. But no, it's all of the energy goes toward the PFAS. Or a trichloroethylene plume is poisoning villages and towns up and down certain rivers in a bunch of different states. But no one's paying attention to it. So, but here, this is your New York City fish advisory. And basically PFAS only gets mentioned once, and that's the East River to Throgs Neck Bridge. You know where that is. The rest are PCBs, which are, used in electrical fittings and have both industrial and military applications. PCBs are bad news. They get in fish and they don't go away. But this is it, but while we're on the subject of other contaminants, I wanted to bring this, to your attention. I don't know if Bethpage is not too far from the city, but the Naval Weapons Industrial Reserve Plant has thoroughly contaminated the groundwater. And this is just a snapshot of one place, man. You've got military bases throughout your state, and your state is, it's bad. There are worse, but look at the trichloroethylene. You've got a trichloroethylene plume that is one of the greatest in the world, with 580 million parts per billion. I don't know if it'll ever go away, but it will kill people for a very, very long time. I think another one is chromium-6. That was Aaron Brockovich's chemical of passion. But you have a massive plume of that as well. And so, they can do whatever they want. The military can they can make weapons. And so isn't it ironic in a way that when you're attempting to figure out clever ways to kill people in mass, this is a byproduct of it? Tell me it ain't true. But all of this aside, and you know what? You can go to PubChem, National Institute of Health, and you can put in aluminum. What happens if you're drinking aluminum, in water with 20 million parts per billion? Too much. Anyway, I want to shift back to PFAS and the military and take a sip of my apple juice. Okay. So these are parts per trillion of PFAS in 5 different bases. And you can see that, Plattsburgh's PFOA levels are astronomical. Let me look over on the right side. 981,000 parts per trillion of PFOA at Plattsburgh is 245,000,025 times over the EPA's limit for groundwater. The DoD dictates environmental policy in the United States. Simple. So the EPA can make these grand proclamations. They don't enforce anything. The EPA does not enforce anything when it comes to PFAS. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out when the Biden administration finally categorizes PFOS and PFOA as hazardous substances. And they're supposed to be doing that with their rule that is expected by the end of the year. And it's important because the Superfund law carries with it penalties, which would make the polluter have to pay to clean it up and to take care of wasted human life. So, of course, it's not going to apply, I don't think, to the military. And right now, there's a tremendous amount of work going on in the background to make sure that certain corporations, get waivers of liability. Well, let me move. So here's more about Lake Champlain. Marguerite and Bob, from Winooski, went over to Champlain and they tested the waters and they found almost 8,000 parts per trillion of PFOS. The couple tested water in the Salmon River, close to US Route 9. And I don't think I mentioned this later, but the University of Minnesota and the state of Minnesota say that bioaccumulation rates are between roughly 1,000 to 5,000 times the ambient water level. So, if you have 10 parts per trillion of PFOS in water, you might hike that by 5,000. So you could have fish with tens of thousands or even more parts per trillion of PFOS because the stuff bioaccumulates. It just grows and grows and grows in the fish as it does with us. And of course, the Air Force doesn't give a damn. They could do whatever they want to do. Consider this redacted segment. There's hundreds of wells. It's kind of fun, when you go onto Google Maps, and that little yellow man, he kind of looks like the not the Pillsbury Doughboy, but maybe the Michelin guy, and then you put him down and then you get to see what's on the roads and stuff. I mean, you can go down streets and you can see if people have wells. And I do that a lot. And yeah, lots of country folks and lots of wells, but the Air Force claims sovereign immunity in court. So if you try to sue them, they'll say they have the right to poison us. It's national security, of course. So nobody gives a damn. A largemouth bass caught near me, near Joint Base Andrews, contained 94,200 parts per trillion of PFOS. It's been linked to all kinds of problems, especially pregnant women. Read this. Increase the risk of high blood pressure and preeclampsia in pregnant women. In children, it can cause a decrease in infant birth rates, increased cholesterol levels, decreased vaccine responses, the development of ADD, autism, asthma, and yet financial interests trump. We can't get movement, This is Spangdahlem, or is it? No, yeah, it is. Isn't that an amazing photo? That really gets it. Look at them. So they take an old fuselage of a plane, and then they douse everything with jet fuel. Then they light everything on fire, and then they have the firefighters put it out for practice. Not anymore. They've changed their tune. They're not using the stuff in practice anymore, and they are changing the types of firefighting foams they have, to fluorine-free foams. So militaries and airports around the world shifted 10 years ago. Not here. We're getting around to it now. The damage has been done. This stuff doesn't go away. That's what people don't get into their heads, It's like, okay, we have a problem. How do we get rid of it? We can't. We can't burn it. We can't bury it. All the things that you do, you can't do with PFAS. Okay, now this is a part that I think is crucially important to understand as far as the military is concerned. And this is something I have been very frustrated about because I haven't been able to get it across to people. I mentioned the crown plating and engine cleaning and wire coating. At the end of the day, the chemicals go down the drain to either surface waters or wastewater treatment plants. Wastewater treatment plants don't treat for PFAS. Okay. So, and it really doesn't matter. It goes directly into surface water which goes into the creeks, which goes into the rivers and the bays and the ocean, or it goes in a wastewater treatment plant. Now, in a wastewater treatment plant, you have solids, which become, the sludge, which is spread on agricultural fields. And then you have the liquid, which is, the effluent, and that goes into the river. And so, and it's interesting. The PFOA goes into the solids more so. And so the PFOA goes into the farm fields, and it is deadly. The uptake is tremendous, especially in plants that are high water. And so like lettuce, or asparagus or strawberries. I mean, you can eat strawberry, and a single strawberry could have more PFAS than drinking water at the limit for a 90-year lifetime. I mean, it's the food, it's not so much the water. Sure, in some communities you could be drinking poisoned water, but for the most part, throughout most of America today, they've got it under control. We have granular activated carbon filter systems. And so where I am, well, I mean, I'm on a well, and my well is fine, goes down 350 feet. But people on the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission tested several, people around the region, and it's like 2 or 3 or 4 parts per trillion. Not to make light of it, but it's nothing like eating a fish with 80,000 parts per trillion. So anyway, this stuff goes down the drain. Now this is a crucially important slide. So the Naval Research Laboratory Chesapeake Bay Detachment is located on the Chesapeake Bay. And it's really cool because I've got 2 great friends, Jane Cyphers and Joe Levine, who Jane's parents, grandparents, great-great-great-great-grandparents owned all of the land in the region that the Navy base is now on. So this woman really understands the land. I mean, they have used depleted uranium all over the place. And so the Golden Rule is coming, and it's going to anchor in the bay right off of Jane and Joe's property. And they're going to, stay a couple of days with them. And so anyway, Jane and I went out, well, Jane did, and got a sample of the stream as it went into the Chesapeake Bay, and found that it contained 8,000 parts per trillion of mostly PFOS. So what I'm showing you here is a graphic from the Navy. Basically the blue stream up at the top left comes from the firefighting area that's been in use since 1968, longer than anywhere else on Earth. So they developed the stuff here. They'd come down from the, Naval Research Lab in DC, and this is like 35 miles away on Chesapeake Bay, and they would blow stuff up and put it out and test the foam. So longer here than anywhere. So anyway, you can see what happens is as the PFOS, PFOA, and other chemicals leave a particular area, they travel, and as they travel, they seep into the earth. They become part of the groundwater. They become part of other surface waters further out, and they will contaminate us forever. But PFOS contained 137 parts per trillion until it got to the wastewater treatment plant where the red X is. See that little black circle to the right of the red X? There's other black circles where the graphic is. Anyway, what happens there is all of the drains go to the wastewater treatment plant, and they treat that water for 9 heavy metals. For the Clean Water Act from the 80s, but they don't treat it for PFAS. And so you can see that the levels of PFOS, this is according to the Navy, spiked from 137 to 1230, an 8-fold spike, and PFOA increases as well. So this is crucially important. And then, down at the bottom right corner, probably another 700 or 800 feet is the Chesapeake Bay, where we tested the water to find 8,000 parts per trillion. So, this graphic is revealing, Of course, they didn't tell us the truth on the levels, I don't think. So, but very important to understand this. It's not just about firefighting foams. See, what the Navy, I mean, what the DOD wants you to think is that, oh my God, it's all about the drinking water. And not only that, you know, we stopped using it in the AFFF. We're not using it in firefighting foam. So everybody go away. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain there. Like, you know, when Toto in The Wizard of Oz pulled the curtain away. So anyway, now this is a graphic that's 4 years old. And, you know, the dotted lines say lower certainty, but they're all solid lines now. So just look at it for a minute. This is an existential threat to humanity. And, you know, it's amazing. PFAS was bumped into in an accident in 1938 by DuPont chemists in New Jersey. And they mistakenly combined fluorine, you know, with carbon. And the next day they had this material, and within a couple of weeks they discovered that nothing puts out fires better, nothing repels water better, and nothing repels grease better. And it's still true today. So the military applications are just phenomenal, and they immediately used it in the Manhattan Project. That's where PFAS got its launch, because they realized they needed that stuff around in case things got out of control while trying to make a nuclear weapon. And so after the Manhattan Project, they realized they could put it on raincoats or hush puppy boots or, you know, all kinds of, you know, stain master carpets or what have you. So I'm just about done. You know, I get support from the Downs Law Group. And thank God I do, because otherwise I'd be working in a soup kitchen here, you know, making $12.50 an hour in order to supplement my my retirement, which ain't much because I've been a political activist all my life. So Downs came to me, and you know, I put a flyer, a little banner at the bottom, and you know, they tell me don't worry about money, and so it has allowed me to like double or even triple my output. So what we're doing here is we've got a multi-base class action lawsuit. So if you go to Veterans and Civilians Clean Water Alliance, you know, on Facebook, you'll see that we've got several hundred people now who are gearing up for a great big class action. So, you know, we're gathering data, and it's hard to do. You know, you can't just go you know, piecemeal and say, oh, we've got 3 guys at Wordsmith and we all have testicular cancer. It doesn't work that way. You got to clobber them with a sledgehammer. And this is what, you know, I'm hoping to do. So I hope you don't, you know, interpret this the wrong way. You know, I've paid my dues in this movement. Anyway, just kind of wanted to stop here.
Hey, wow, what a great presentation. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, man.
Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
I think we should switch to a Q&A session. If anybody have any questions, please raise your hand and ask Pat, please. And let's see. Pat, can you take off? Maybe we should keep the PowerPoint.
Screen. You want me
Yeah.
to stop share?
What do you think? Everyone, do we need a PowerPoint?
No.
No, it's
No.
okay. All right,
No.
let's take it then. Thank you.
There.
So
Well, I hope I didn't bore you.
just devastating. The number you presented was just unbelievable. And
Yeah.
this is another case of a very irresponsible act of our military. What else do we have? You know, Agent Orange, noise, this type of pollution, etc., etc. And this is another material that we have to tackle. Oh, okay, Ben, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, in your opinion, you were kind of saying like this stuff is, you can't really remediate it or just get rid of it. So this stuff is just here now. There's really no fixing this problem. We just need to hold people accountable. Is there anything that can be, I guess, done down the line to help us?
Yeah, it's problem. We, first of all, we need to stop manufacturing the stuff. I mean, the crime is inherent in manufacturing the PFAS. That's starters. Vermont did a study, and we were helpful in trying to get that going. Military poisons folks up in Vermont, and they took just little like 5x7 swatches of a carpet and a chair and a couch. And they put it into some blender, and then they did science that I don't understand. And they found that that it had an average of 1.2 million parts per trillion of PFAS. Okay, and this is at the Casella landfill, on the shores of Lake Memphremagog up in Vermont. Beautiful. And so they just take those couches and they just take that giant bulldozer and they crush it, and then it goes into the ground and they bury it, and the rains come and the snows come and it percolates like a coffee filter. And that the leachate comes out and it contaminates us forever. And so what do? We keep it out of the waste stream, and maybe we create giant warehouses with concrete floors until the technology catches up with us. But we need immediately to establish giant granular activated carbon systems. And it's amazing, really, what we're able to do. But we need to set them up, not just for the drinking water, as we have done across the country, but for the wastewater treatment plants. Man, before they go into the water, we've got to capture most of the PFAS. And then, of course, we have a problem with millions and millions of tons of highly contaminated granular carbon, pieces. And so again, the warehouse idea, but this is not clear at all how we're going to do this. But if you read into it, you'll see that we don't know what to do. And that's not something American. It is counter to American culture.
Thank you, Pat. Anyone else?
Come on, guys. Nothing?
Any questions? Ben, again?
Ben's a trooper. Come on, buddy.
Tom, can I ask a question?
Who's this?
Yeah, this is Tom from Albany.
Go ahead, please, Tom.
Yeah, I've worked on environmental issues for about 40 years. 40. And I remember, during nearly this whole time, the State Department of Environmental Conservation in New York State has been encouraging spreading of sewage sludge on land and on farmland. And to me, it just seems it was absurd back in the 1980s when I first learned about it. But with all the PFASs and PFOSs that are in the sewage sludge now, it's even more insane, and I kind of agree with what you said, that we don't really know what to do with it. We've got so much poison that we don't know what to do with it. And I don't know what to do with sewage sludge. There doesn't seem to be a good solution to what to do with all of the thousands of tons of sewage sludge that we generate every day in New York State.
I don't have a solution. I know, cadmium and beryllium and lead and mercury. I mean, these are horrible chemicals. And, I think it is extremely instructive to look at the European Union, the European Commission, and say Denmark's levels for contaminants allowed in the discharge of wastewater treatment fluids. Because when you look at what America allows, we set the limits in the mid 80s, and we haven't changed them since. And yet we have discovered so many more contaminants. But you know, it all gets down to, and I've learned a lot working with the Environmental Working Group in their lobbying. You know, the members of the United States Senate's Environmental and Public Works Committee hold the cards, man. You know, the House is feeble, and it may, you know, occasionally bring, you know, something to a conference committee, wobbly. But the guys that sit, and women, on this committee are most powerful. And if you go to opensecrets.org and you look at, you know, their repackaging of, you know, FEC numbers, you'll see that they are heavily lavished with millions of dollars from the chemical industry. And until we can solve that problem, we're not going to get anywhere.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now, Anthony, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you very much, Rachel, or Ellen, whatever you're going by today. Pat, that was extraordinary, really disheartening once again, and troublesome, but really well put together. I want to just thank you so much for the years of tremendous effort bucking all the things you had to buck to get that information invaluable. I'm so glad we recorded it. It would be great to get some of those European charts for us to just take a glance of what you're saying, but it doesn't matter. It sounds really tough. And today we were talking about the golden rule going up into Newark and up into the Passaic River. And just today, the person who knows the Passaic River is like, well, it's really shallow and you don't really want to stir up that mud in the Passaic because it's got all these contaminants in there and you'll be stuck in. And I'm like, wow. So yeah, it's all around us, and what to do with those tons and tons and tons of sludge. But Pat, thank you for this work. It's enlightening, and it hopefully will motivate us all to get Congress to do something and stop making this stuff. Thank you. God bless you.
I remember
Wow.
the Passaic River, you know, that there was a study a while ago of the tamale. Anybody know what tamale is? Tamale? It is the mustard of a crab. And so, you know, when you have a crab and you open the crab up, you know, and you break it in half and you've got the back fin on both sides, but there's that kind of yellow liquidy stuff. There's nothing more toxic. And so the levels in the Passaic, I mean, just a drop of that stuff would far exceed, you know, anything you're going to find in drinking water over a lifetime. And so, but these are inconvenient truths. I feel like Al Gore.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Okay, how about Sabak? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes. Could I share the PowerPoint material? I'd like to read more carefully later.
How long does it take? A few minutes, I hope.
You want me to go through it again?
Just I want to have a copy of their PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. No, we'll get you a copy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
it.
no problem.
Any question, Sabak?
I'm scared. I feel like a doomsday, the end of the human beings, scary. And we have to consume less. However, is there any answer to this problem quickly?
I don't know. I think, you know, it's just brings up for me ancient Greek mythology. And we have the story, you know, of Daedalus and Icarus when, you know, I think Icarus fastened feathers with wax to his son to fly, and they both flew. And he said to his son, "Don't you dare go too close to the sun, because if you do, the wax will melt and you'll fall to your death." And that's exactly what happened. And so sometimes technologies, escape our ability to control them. And then it's also kind of like Pandora's box, She was told, don't open that box. You're going to be in trouble. And you're going to have a hell of a time close it again, because these things. And so what we have is a game of whack-a-mole. And so, right now the federal government has people believing that they are going to take care of this. And yet what's happened is PFOA, PFOS, PFBS, Gen X, they've all been substituted. We have substitutes for these things. Okay, fine. They're not 8 carbon chain, they're 6 carbon chain, 4 carbon chain. Okay, fine. They don't cause spontaneous abortion in women at 3 months. It takes 6 months. That's what we're dealing with here.
Rachel,
You
I'm
bet.
sorry, I make a quick question again. Now, in Japan, the Fukushima contaminated water, they plan to release to a Pacific Ocean. The whole Asian people scared. Do you think we have a solution instead of releasing the contaminated water?
I'll tell you what, I have 2 master's degrees, one in education and one in government research. I don't have a degree in sciences at all. And so I'm a one-trick pony. I mean, 5 years ago, I got into this. I was at a conference in Germany. And, one of the people at the conference was talking about burn pits and mentioned PFAS and said it's bioaccumulative. It never goes away. It's killing people left and right. Nobody knows about it. Pat Hines is the woman's name. And PhD from Northeastern University.
Mhm.
And I mean, I got into it at that point. So, I've taught myself and tried to learn what I could, but I don't even consider myself an expert. An expert would at least have a degree in the sciences.
Can I throw in what I know about the Fukushima's nuclear wastewater? Just a few seconds. Is it okay? It's kind of outside of today's.
No, but go ahead. I mean, I don't.
Okay, the Fukushima does have more than enough land to build, oil combinate type of a huge tank, but it's so expensive. That's why they want to dump it. And there's another driving power coming from the United States as well. For example, there are several old nuclear reactors, especially on the East Coast, and several on the West Coast as well. And they want to release their nuclear wastewater into nearby river and ocean. So if Fukushima established a global standard, it will be much easier for the United States nuclear reactors to release their water. That's why they are pushing forward Fukushima to release it. But those people who are gung-ho anti releasing water, they've been telling that there are enough land, okay? And the cesium-137's half-life is 30 years, okay? So as long as they have a very sturdy big tanks, big enough to store, for now, just let it sit for another 30 years or 60 years, and it will be much easier to treat in several decades later, okay? That's our argument point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, now I think Ben and followed by Phil. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ben.
I guess I just wanted to know, like, in your personal opinion, is the conversation around this going to start changing pretty quickly if Biden declares PFAS dangerous chemical? Will that have pretty big implications for getting us to stop putting this out there? Or do you think it's still going to be like a really hard fight after that?
No, it's going to be a really tough fight. I have these are fascists, and they don't give a damn about us. And they're making too much money, and their benefactors are making too much money. And I'm not optimistic about it at all. What you've seen out of the EPA in the last day is celebratory. It is self-congratulatory, and yet they have set limits on 6 types of PFAS, and they haven't even made it mandatory yet. They're talking about next year sometime. There are 12,000 types of PFAS. They're talking about 6. Not only that, but the Europeans say that 86% of the PFAS in our bodies is from food, not even the water. So they're missing most of it. And yet, you see my frustration. It's a mind blower, man. But increasingly, more and more people are understanding it. You have groups of people. Philip Grandjean with Harvard University School of Public Health, they're on it, man. And Northeastern University in Boston, they're on it. The Environmental Working Group, they could be a lot more strident, but they're on it. The Sierra Club's Toxic Action Team is another group that sees it the way I do. So it's coming around. There are more and more people that are beginning to understand it. But, when you try to break it down to a legislator in Annapolis in Maryland, and you say, look, you got 2.5 million parts per trillion of PFOA in spray to combat mosquitoes. We don't think this is a good idea because we've traced the stuff draining into the Potomac River. And they just say, well, trillions really little. That's really little. We're still miles away.
Okay, thank you. Then Phil, and followed by Tom. Phil, please unmute yourself. Phil, unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's good.
Yeah, just to add to the state, the what's going on with Fukushima. The Pilgrim plant in Massachusetts Bay they want to dump their wastewater as well. They have a huge, they have huge tanks. That plant's been operating. I worked on that plant when it was being built in the 1970s, and it's been operating since then. And they've just got this huge amount of wastewater, and they've decided that they're just going to dump it into Massachusetts Bay, which would completely destroy the shellfish industry and the lobster industry and the fishing industry totally. Who would want to eat radioactive clams, fish, or whatever, or lobster? So it's whatever happens at Fukushima has enormous ramifications for these kinds of things around the world.
Damn.
I definitely agree. All right, Tom.
Thank you, Phil, for that. I did not know that. And
I didn't either.
I'm somebody who likes to get to Cape Cod in the summertime. Massachusetts Bay and Cape Cod Bay are the same thing, depending on which side of the bay you're on. And that it would go a long way to destroying safe swimming, and in addition to the fishing industry and whatnot. So that's unbelievable. I wanted to ask Pat, if back to PFASs, do we have any idea what percentage of PFAS chemicals are used of the total percentage manufactured? What chunk of that is being used by the military? Because seems to me that Veterans for Peace is the best position to challenge something with the military book.
Well, my understanding is that approximately 12,000 compounds have been developed. And I'd be willing to say that the military uses less than 100 that I've been able to see in fish testing, soil testing, sediment testing, and water testing. Not many.
Well, I wasn't asking what percentage of the total number of PFASs, but more the total, I guess, pounds produced of all PFAS.
Oh, that.
Because even if it's 10 of them, that might be the vast majority of what is actually bought or manufactured. That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, we don't know. I don't know. I don't think that information is available. Yeah, that's actually a great question. I think knowing the Chesapeake region intimately and having tested so many waterways, I'm willing to say that overwhelmingly the contamination of seafood is because of military use, because they just used extraordinarily amounts of the stuff. But we're not privy to that information. That's the
And just
problem.
to sort of add to my question, is the military required to report on it effluents that it creates, or any toxins that are produced,
Well, most
like
people. Yeah.
private industry is?
Yeah.
No, I mean the EPA doesn't regulate stuff, so that we don't have any record of
Wow.
the levels. I mean the EPA is really sitting on its hands. I don't know how else to put it, but they're doing the bidding of their corporate sponsors, best as I could figure. There's no regulation. So if the EPA wanted, they could say, hey, military, we want you to report quarterly on the compounds, 55 analytes of PFAS on all of your wastewater treatment plants. They can do that. Boom. Not happening.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Phil, did I skip to you? Phil, do you still have something to ask? Oh, he took off. Okay. I just wanted to add one more thing from what I know. Before, somebody mentioned about fertilizer, right? When I moved to where I live 2.5 years ago, and during the winter, I started to use my wood stove, and I got the ash sample, and I sent it to a lab in Japan.
You did?
I did. And they detected 51 becquerels per kilogram. Okay. So when you incinerate wood, ash's radiation level get more concentrated, like probably 200 to 300 times more, which means that if it's a fresh wood, it's just a 0.2 to 0.3%, 0.2 to 0.3 becquerels per kilogram. Okay, they detected only cesium-137, no cesium-134, which means this radiation's origin is not from Fukushima, but probably most likely the nuclear tests operated in the western side of this country. Okay, which is what over here is like like a 2,000 miles away from Nevada test site. So here we still detect 0.2, which means if you run the similar survey throughout this nation, when you get closer to the test site, 0.2 becomes 0.4, 5, you never know, right? It's gonna, but just like Japan, this country never ever tests the soil itself, which is very crucial. And another thing, when I somehow a couple of years ago, I had to run some research about the fertilizer. There's a something brand name called a Fertilimer. And I checked the Fertilimer. This is the organic fertilizer made out of sewage and
Mhm.
and ash from burnt wood. This is
Oh.
a bio, how do you say, biomass,
Biosolid?
biomass energy plant, power plant waste. They mix all together and became a brand name called the Fertilimer. But when you think of it, this supposedly organic fertilizer contains the radiation from burnt ash, and also PFAS, and those chemicals from sewage. This is highly, highly toxic, and they're selling as an organic fertilizer. I just noticed it today. It's so horrible. And
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And the tamari that you mentioned, the yellow stuff in the crab,
Right.
that's regarded as a delicacy in Japan. It's very, very tasty. And I've heard, oh my God, that's
Right.
the most toxic area. So
There's a report done by the Sierra Club toxics team, and it's called Sludge in Your Garden. And they analyzed 9 different products around the country that are soil additives, or that you buy at the hardware store to grow your tomato plants. And it's called they looked at the product from DC Water. So what's happening now is privately owned and publicly owned wastewater treatment plants are creating these products for sale. And the product called Bloom's Fertilizer in Washington, DC, a product of the DC government's DC Water, contained almost 250,000 parts per trillion of PFAS, including 22,000 parts per trillion of PFOS and 23,000 parts per trillion of PFOA. So yeah, I mean, it's deadly, and we are allowing it. But the problem is nobody knows about it. And so that's where this is so important.
Thank you very much. I think you are going to make an amazing audience surprise when you go to Japan. And please mention what you explained today. And also, you can predict what's going to come to Japan once Taiwan contingency actually starts. U.S. military will use bases in Japan as a stepping stone toward Taiwan. Then all major corporations in Japan is going to be a function like their garage and fixed.
Yeah.
So now you can predict what's going to come to Japan. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other people? Any questions? All right. So please give your round of applause to Pat Elder, who shared his amazing knowledge of PFAS, and what actually encroaching our daily healthy life. We all need to spread these words to all across the world. Thank you very much, Pat.
Well, it's wonderful, Rachel. I appreciate it. I'm excited. I'm excited about causing trouble in Japan. Just, keep me, just keep me
Pat,
straight.
they're gonna love you in Japan.
Really? I hope, man.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, I just, I hope it goes well. And, I'm gathering a lot of statistics right now, trying.
And I think you are much needed by Okinawa and also other military hosting cities in the mainland.
Yeah. Hey, guys,
Here to go.
and Tarek, the golden rule is actually coming to my house.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So I'm stoked. And that's going to be on the night of March 29th to the 30th. So we have a really cool place. It's kind of on a peninsula, and sandy beach, dock, boat, that kind of deal. And they're gonna anchor and the crew's gonna be here and, Jerry is gonna be here and Helen and, I hope to have a party. So, the place is, not many bedrooms or anything, but if you bring an air
Sleeping bag.
mattress, yeah, man. I've had some radical retreats here and had 50 or 60, but Tarek, if you want to come down, anybody, just come.
Okay, I'm
down.
planning on it. I'm
Really?
planning. I'm not sure what day I'll get down, but
Yeah,
definitely planning on it.
yeah, that'll be instant karma, man. It's gonna get you.
That'd be great. Be good to see you in person again.
Cool.
Shall we shift to our regular meeting? What do you think, Bob?
Can I go home now?
Yes, you can. Thank you so much.
Hey, man, I love you guys. I do. I do.
Tremendous, Pat,
The-
tremendous.
yeah,
Thank you
the-
so much.
The future depends on you all.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, see you.
All right.
Tom,
So
I'm also going to leave, but thank you for having that excellent program.
thank you very much for coming. See you next
Thank
time.
I hope
you.
to hear more of them. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, bye-bye.
Okay, Bob, shall we go to the next?
Did
regular-
you, wait a minute, Rachel,
Yes, yes.
have you told everyone that you're not actually Ellen Davidson?
Yeah, I'm an Asian version of Ellen tonight. All right.
Okay,
All right. I have another cat here too. Well, this is not totally blank, but I have a little one. Okay. All right. So, Bob, shall we go to the agenda? Go ahead.
You're still recording, Rachel?
Oh, am I supposed to record up to here?
no, just the Pat Elder.
Just the pet elder?
Yeah, so you could stop recording.
Okay, hold on, please.
And is that Jean there?
How can I stop this? Oh, okay.
Not Jean, wait